The most real episode I've ever experienced. Submitted by User FerralOne. I recently discovered this subreddit, and I figured I would share my craziest story. This happened earlier this year. As a short background, I've always had some issues with sleeping, as far back as I can remember. Acute insomnia, minor night terrors, along with fairly frequent and fairly severe nightmares. Sleep paralysis sometimes followed, of course, but I've never experienced one so vivid or shocking to me as the one from earlier this year. I had an extended dream. In it, a young woman was present. Her facial features were quite vague in comparison to the rest of the rooms I saw her in. Through different parties, public crowds, and so on, she would approach me and try to speak, but I could never hear anything. This doesn't properly register to me until the near end of the dream, where I'm in a twisted but recognizable version of my bedroom. She then leans in close to me from the left side of my bed while I'm asleep and whispers something to me. I don't understand and finally realize something is wrong. I say, "Wait," and reach out to grab her wrist as she turns to walk away. I wake up the moment I touch her. As I wake up, I'm lying perfectly flat on my back, covers pristinely placed on top of me with my hands perfectly straight on top of covers in front of me. Immediate fucking warning signs. I always thrash around in my sleep, so my covers are never that neat. I can't even fall asleep without having a blanket being turned sideways. I feel fairly numb and almost disembodied, but I still can't move. I stupidly turn to my left. There's a shadow figure shaped like a woman right in front of my face, with her hand placed on my bed. I fucking freeze where I am and watch as she slowly leans back up while looking me right in the eye. This shadow had one of the most unsettling appearances or forms I've ever seen. It was a pitch black silhouette, but very clearly defined, looking exactly human. It was black as night, but at the same time, transparent, and it even gave off its own light. Almost like some sort of television screen. This figure, after standing up, turns around and slowly cruises around my bed and through my closed door. I can't think of a better word than cruise, because it looked like walking and gliding at the same time. I've never had a more vivid and unsettling experience with a dream before. I couldn't tell if it was a phantom, sleep paralysis, or maybe both. I was so freaked out I slept on a friend's couch, which was nearly a 30-minute drive away, every night for a week, just to avoid that room. 3 of my most vivid experiences, 2 of which really happened this month. I'm starting to question reality. By user, was it real or a dream? September 2015. Lying on the couch on my back, looking up, I see a woman in a red dress with blonde hair looking down at me. I reach out my hand, and she hands me a black pistol in my right hand and tosses a small cardboard box of bullets into my lap. I ask her, "Who is this for?" And she says that they're for me. I realize now that she wanted me to shoot her. I outstretch my hand to hers and try to console her and figure out why this is happening, and she holds my hand for a second before walking away. The sensation of her holding my hand felt completely real. I'm still staring at the ceiling, realizing now that I might be in paralysis, and that what I had just experienced wasn't real after all. All of a sudden, she is hovering above me, wearing a black dress now, and with black hair and a fierce expression on her face, coming at me with outstretched hands at lightning speed. I flinch, and she vanishes. I try focusing on a vision I'm starting to see appear. It's her, but back in the red dress and the blonde hair, sitting and staring at me, motioning with her hand like she's shooting me, but in a symbolic way, with her hand making the shape of a gun. I then know that I must wake up as soon as possible, and somehow I jerk myself fully awake. Later in the same month, I awoke in bed, but I was in a spaceship, an H.R. Geiger-style room with futuristic tubes and pipes built into the wall. To my left was an arched opening in the wall, with a sort of translucent white plastic curtain partially covering it. I notice I can't move or speak and realize that I'm going through sleep paralysis. I start to see two dark figures making their way toward the doorway. They're speaking to each other, and I do not understand the language. But somehow, I know they're talking about me. All of a sudden, I break free from the paralysis, and I can move again, and immediately wake up a second time, realizing that I had been experiencing sleep paralysis within a dream. Something that has never happened to me before. Winter 2012. I go to sleep in my bed with my girlfriend next to me, as we usually do. In the middle of the night, I notice I'm a bit chilly, and that at this point I don't have a blanket. As she's a blanket hog, I assume she dragged the comforter over to her side of the bed. I open my eyes, and she is hovering above me, still asleep on her back, but hovering above me with all the blankets draping off of her. And she's rotating. Not spinning in place, necessarily. She never stopped being on her back, facing upwards. No, she was rotating in the air. I start pleading with her to get down from there, and I feel a huge sense of dread when I notice a short, chubby demon at the foot of my bed. All of a sudden, I wake up with my arm around my girlfriend, spooning her like normal, and I shake her awake, telling her that she was just hovering above me and was possessed. Needless to say, she was really freaked out, and that was the beginning of the end of our relationship. At that point, I didn't fully understand what sleep paralysis was, and for a period of time after that, I became fascinated with the devil, demons, and parallel universes. My girlfriend left soon after this ordeal. A personal Reddit sleep paralysis story by an anonymous user. The worst experience I've ever had with sleep paralysis was one time right when I was starting to fall asleep in my bed. What I remember is laying there staring at my closet, which was situated right in front of my bed, and the door was closed. And I watched the door slowly begin to open. I began to freak out and tried to wake myself up, but it seemed like no matter what I did, I was going to continue being paralyzed. After a few seconds, I see this being start to move around in my closet. I had no idea who or what it was, but I knew this thing was bad. Slowly, he walked up to my bed, and I was able to see his face. Usually I'm not scared of clowns, but what I saw terrified me. It was the face of a clown, with gashes all over its face, teeth as sharp as razors, black eyes that burned with a fiery intensity that you could actually see, even though it was pitch black in my room. When it finally reached my bed, it smiled at me, and it made this raspy noise. All the while, he started to lift his arms and show the bloody, claw-like hands that were connected to its grotesque arms. Suddenly, with a flash of movement, it grabbed my neck and started to strangle me. I could do nothing about this. I tried to wake myself up, but I couldn't. Usually I'm very good about waking myself up during sleep paralysis, but this time, it was impossible. After what seemed like an eternity of not being able to breathe, it released me and disappeared into the closet once more. I woke up to nothingness. My closet was still closed, as was my bedroom door, and nothing seemed out of place. Slowly, I checked my room for anything out of the ordinary. Someone in my closet, maybe, bloody footprints on the floor, anything. But I found nothing. So, feeling slightly safer, I laid back down and tried to fall asleep. But to my horror, the exact same thing happens to me again. This time, I felt the pain of its hands cutting into my throat, along with the lack of ability to breathe. After another eternity of torture, I awake to nothing out of the ordinary. I search my house and find nothing. All the doors are locked, windows as well, and everything was still and peacefully quiet. Having been thoroughly scared shitless, I made my way to the bathroom to relieve my stress. And to my horror, I see bruising and red marks around my neck. What I still can't seem to figure out is who was strangling me.
I want to say up front, for the record, that I have zero belief in the paranormal, and I believe that all of what I'm about to tell you is simply a product of the amazing human brain. That said, I realize that others will think differently and appreciate this story, and that doesn't mean this whole thing has never creeped me out. It did, and still does. Anyway, I work overnight at a funeral home. Basically, I babysit the place by myself all night. If someone croaks in the night, I'm there to answer the phones and dispatch someone for the body. I also clean up a little and get the place ready for the funerals the next day. Not the most glamorous job, but the job market sucks right now. And even with my few duties, I ended up with hours to kill every night. I'm not technically supposed to sleep on the job. That said, sometimes I do. I'll nod off at the desk, or sometimes I'll go lay down on one of the couches and take a power nap. I am alone all night, other than a handful of bodies in different rooms, and it's boring. I think most people would do the same. The weird thing is, I get sleep paralysis pretty frequently when I fall asleep at work. Although there have been very few times when someone has shown up at the funeral home unannounced, I'm always fearful that one of the directors will show up unsuspectingly and catch me sleeping. I believe that it's this fear that causes me to have sleep paralysis, because I rarely have it at home. Now, for those of you who have never had sleep paralysis, basically it's like this. Your eyes are open and you're seeing your surroundings, but you're not actually awake. So sometimes you see or hear dream things, like maybe you see something that isn't there or whatever. And you can't move. It feels as though you're being held down and you can't wake up. It feels as if you're straining against something when you try. For myself, I can usually snap myself out of it and wake up if I strain and thrash against it hard enough. And then I come awake suddenly and am able to move. Google it if you want for more information about it. It's interesting. Now, on to the weirdness that began to happen when I would slip into sleep paralysis during a nap. The first was the music. Sometimes I would find myself lying there with my eyes wide open in sleep paralysis. Sometimes I would find myself lying there with eyes wide open. I would begin to hear music, loudly and vividly. It was almost always Christian gospel music, but modern stuff that you would hear on the radio. It always sounded like it was coming from inside my skull, specifically around my mouth area. This is going to sound stupid, but at one point I began to wonder if I was picking up some AM Christian station in my feelings and was only sensitive enough to hear it while I was asleep, or maybe when my mouth was hanging open and dried out. I even went as far as to remember one of the lyrics from the songs and Googled it when I woke up, although it didn't appear to be a real song. Sorry, I don't remember the lyric anymore, as this was months and months ago. Then the weirder things started happening. Sometimes when I would fall into sleep paralysis, I would think I hear someone walking towards me from the hallways. Fearing that it was an employee that had shown up unsuspectingly, I would always frantically strain against the sleep paralysis and wake up. At which point the sound of footsteps would cease. After that, I always felt foolish for getting tricked by dream sounds. The music and the footsteps went on for months and months. When I would hear the footsteps, I'd err on the side of caution and force myself awake in case it really was another employee, only to be annoyed at having gone through the effort for nothing and having ruined a perfectly good nap. One night, I was really tired and napping on the couch. I slipped into this state and heard the footsteps. I decided, screw it. I wasn't going to be tricked by the sleep paralysis for the millionth time, so I just laid there, expecting that I would either eventually wake up normally without the strain, or I would go back to full sleep, or the stupid footsteps would continue the way the music always did if I just laid there. Nope. To my complete surprise, the footstepper showed himself. I was laying on my back stretched out, and the man came walking from the direction of my head, coming into my field of view, stopping directly next to me. There was nothing memorable about him, just a white male in some kind of dress shirt and slacks, except for one thing. His face and head were obscured. They were blurred out, just like they do in the news for anonymous witnesses or whatever. His head and face were obviously there, but I could see nothing but a smeary blur. Then, to my horror, he reached out and poked me lightly in the forehead and let out a kind of sinister chuckle. Sinister is probably the wrong word. It's more like he was laughing as if to say, "Yeah, feel real brave now, don't you?" And at that point, of course, I snapped myself awake and found myself alone, as always. It was very disturbing, to say the least. Probably not as much for most, because I truly have no belief in ghosts or the paranormal, and chalked it up to brain tricks. But since then, it's happened twice more. The second time I saw someone, I found myself with eyes open in sleep paralysis, staring at, I shit you not, a woman wearing a rubber clown mask and holding a gun to the side of her head. She was just staring at me passively. Thankfully, I knew immediately that it was just my sleep paralysis and didn't panic. But I was unnerved enough to force myself awake and cause the woman to vanish. The third time was similar to the first. I was lying on the couch, and this time a small child approached me from behind. I think it was a boy, but I can't say for sure. Probably around 6 or 7, I'd say. And his face was also blurred in the same way the man's had been. He giggled once in amusement. I was immediately scared to the point I forced myself awake. Of all the times that this has happened, that was the most disturbing by far. And that's it. That's my story. Sorry it doesn't have a better resolution, but as I said, this is all true, and I don't really believe there's anything paranormal going on here. But it's fucking freaky, no?
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Sleep paralysis was a subject that I had found out about in 2004, and at the time it absolutely terrified me. I would end up asking my dad to stay up late into the night as a sort of defense against the demons lurking in the shadows of sleep. Now, as an adult, the topic is more fascinating than truly terrifying. I hope you enjoyed my collaboration with Unit 522, a great YouTuber with a wonderful channel. He also has a video on his channel that we worked on together, and I would appreciate it if you went over via the link in the description below, watched it, and gave him some love. If you'd like me to delve deeper into this topic, or perhaps do a collaboration with me yourself, please let me know in the comments below, or you can reach me at my email, which is in the About section. Follow me on Twitter or Tumblr for day-to-day updates. And remember, it's a reckless world out there. Stay safe, friends.